Hey, thanks for clicking on the video. Today we're taking a look at the ultimate boss DPS build. And seeing as we're in the final sandbox of Destiny 2 ever, unfortunately, we have a winner. No other build, no other setup can match what we're going to showcase today, making Hunters the ultimate champions of boss DPS. As for some accolades that this build has gathered, it can easily one-phase every single boss inside the new Pantheon, and it even scores 1 phases on Cutthroat difficulty in said Pantheon. So I can without a doubt say that this build is pretty broken. And if you want to top the DPS charts, you should definitely use this. But now, before we jump deeper into the video, I want to ask you guys to subscribe to the channel. We're almost to 30K and I'm trying to hit 50K before whatever, and I can't do that without your help. Also, there are dim links, plural, and timestamps down in the description. The dim links are for running loadouts, DPS loadouts, some alterations that you can make to this build. I'll go over all of that in the video, but just know that everything I talk about today, you can get easily through the click of literally one button. Also, the timestamps are there so that you can skip through the video and get whatever information you want. And then as the last little bit of YouTube shout out, again, subscribe. Also, you can come and say hi to me on Twitch or in my Discord. Both of those are linked down in the description. And if you're on mobile, you should think about hyping the video. If you know what that is, it helps out small channels a lot. But now, with that said, let's actually get into the video. To begin our showcase, we are going to start with the exotic weapon that allows hunters to nuke bosses. And it's not just raid bosses. You can use this versus champions or anything else with a high health bar. But the exotic of choice is the Leviathan's Breath Heavy Bow. This bow's main exotic perk reads, fires a massive heavy bolt that stuns unshielded combatants strong against unstoppable champions. Looking at this in-game, the actual effects, or just how the bow shoots, on impact we deal a great deal of damage, just like you would expect a heavy weapon to do. The Leviathan's Breath also comes with an aftershock that deals almost equivalent damage, making one shot from this heavy bow deal 2,198 damage. Now, looking at the second exotic perk, well, we've already seen it already. This causes any target hit by our fully charged bow to also become volatile for a little bit more damage. Volatile, unfortunately, doesn't scale its own damage with the source that applies it, so the damage here is actually pretty negligible. And then the final part of this exotic, and easily the most important for the current sandbox, is the catalyst. This reads, draw time decreases after every precision hit and maximizes quiver size. So to take a look at this first in game, the first thing you're going to notice is that we actually get 5 more arrows in total. This is a lot of extra damage. Then the second part is really what makes Leviathan's Breath meta and usable right now, and that is we get a beefed up version of Archer's Tempo. This perk will decrease our charge time after hitting a precision hit. And since this bow has such a long charge time, with it being slashed after your first hit, you actually do start to pump out a ton of damage. Now this bow is good, but by itself, it's not meta. So let's talk about buffing it, which brings us to our next topic that's actually going to be within our subclass. And this is specifically what super we run within this build. That ends up being Shadow Shot Mobius Quiver. This super reads, tether foes to a void anchor, dramatically weakening and suppressing them for you and your allies. Fire 2 volleys of 3 void arrows that seek nearby targets. Shadow Shot makes targets volatile and deals increased damage to tethered targets. Defeating tethered targets creates orbs of power. While the super is active, dealing damage increases the damage of your void arrows and bow weapons. Taking a look at this in-game, the first thing we can see about the super is the multiple casts of it that we get from one charge. And with each cast, we can deal more damage and increase the time that affected targets are debuffed. But the main reason that we use the super is for the increase to bow type damage. Here on the left, we can see a meter appear after using our super. This will increase our bow damage up to plus 150% when that meter is fully charged. One single Leviathan's Breath arrow fully charges this. So where our old Leviathan's Breath was dealing 2,198, each shot after the first will come out quicker thanks to the catalyst and now deal 5,332. And across the full duration of our super, we get 10 arrows out of the 14 to be buffed. But now continuing to how we can buff this bow with or without our super, we have our exotic armor piece of choice, and that ends up being Fortune's Favor. These exotic legs read: after landing a final blow while at full health or when out of combat for an extended duration, your shields will slowly recharge into an overshield. When you have an overshield, your weapons gain increased accuracy, stability, handling, and damage against combatants, and final blows will grant a short period of increased mobility once the overshield is depleted. Starting with how this overshield is achieved, the easiest method is literally doing nothing. By being out of combat, we get this overshield to proc, with infinite time as well. We can also manually start it by just getting a kill while we have full HP. Then for the effects while the overshield is active, the main thing is that we get a damage multiplier to all of our outgoing weapon damage. We can see this most easily by looking at Leviathan's Breath. Previously, one arrow hit for 2198. Now, with an overshield active, one arrow is going to hit for 2512. That is a 15% increase in damage. And when we pair that with Mobius Quiver, we now deal 6,137, which is a total 180% increase per shot over base Levi's Breath. Now, with our exotic covered though, I want to briefly touch on the idea that you're locked to one single exotic. Fortune's Favor is good, but it doesn't allow us to spam abilities or anything like that. So this is where I want to say you can use 2 loadout slots, with one using an exotic like Graviton Forfeit, and then you have a DPS loadout slot that has Fortune's Favor and all the mods and stuff that we're going to cover today. And also, you may have seen my last video about one-phasing bosses. In that video, the Void Hunter used Orpheus Rigs, and this is an effective option simply because it makes our tether drain slower, so more of your arrows get buffed. Although Fortune's Favor does end up slightly being better, especially since it buffs other weapons besides just the bow. But regardless of which route you choose, if you follow along with this video, you're going to perform well no matter what. Now, moving on, we have the rest of our subclass to look at. We already know our super is Mobius Quiver. Our next ability is going to be Gambler's Dodge so that we can recharge our melee whenever we do dodge. And that melee is the brand new Phantom Surge. This is mainly chosen because it's really fun to use, but it also synergizes with our aspects and it gives us some on-demand Void Overshield. Granted, we really don't need it. And then after that, we have our final ability, which is our grenade, and that is Vortex Grenade. It's nice and simple and pretty potent. But now moving on, we have our first aspect, this one being Vanishing Step. This aspect says that whenever we use our dodge, we go invisible. It's pretty simple and pretty effective. I feel like I really don't need to show this off, but here we go. You dodge, you're invisible. Aspect done. Our second aspect though is On the Prowl. This aspect will mark targets over time or when we go invisible, and killing marked targets will release a smoke cloud that makes us invisible while regenerating some of our abilities. We can see in game how this aspect marks enemies. It'll just happen after a couple seconds, or when we go invisible, it'll immediately do one. And then we can see the benefits of killing the marked enemies. Ultimately, this aspect is really passive and I tend not to think about it too much. It just gives us some nice benefits and actually some team support for playing the game like normal. Now, finishing off our subclass, we have our Fragments. First is Echo of Starvation, so that we get devoured from orbs and void breaches. This will heal us in a pinch. Then we run Echo of Persistence, so our void buffs last longer. Then Echo of Undermining, so our void grenades will weaken enemies. Echo of Provision, so grenade damage refunds melee energy. And then lastly, Echo of Exchange, so that melee final blows give us some grenade energy. Now, being done with our subclass, our exotic weapon, our exotic armor pieces, I want to talk about our other optional weapons that supplement this build. For most current bosses, after dumping all of your Leviathan's Breath, you would swap to a sniper rifle to continue doing damage. There's actually a ton of meta snipers right now, but my go-to options are Praedyth's Revenge or Conspiracy Honed. Both of these go in the kinetic slot, allowing you to swap from Mint Retrograde to the sniper, allowing you to keep all of your ammo. But honestly, when it comes to secondary damage options, most bosses are going to die before you actually run out of arrows in the current sandbox. Now moving on from weapons, we're going to dip into our artifact. With the new artifact system, this build has a lot to think about when it comes to dealing max damage. And the ultimate decision is that we run the Implement of Curiosity. From left to right, we run Elemental Benevolence to get a bit of class ability back when our allies go invis thanks to On the Prowl. Then we use Semi-Auto Striker to give us some armor charge for simply hitting crits with Leviathan's Breath. This is important for longer damage phases. We run Elemental Daze because why not have explosions on Champ Stun? then shoulder to shoulder to get some damage resist during DPS. Last in the tier 2 is Elemental Coalescence, so we spawn some erroneous void breaches every now and then. Then inside of tier 3, we run Shield Crust, which will make our Phantom Surge deal more damage and allow it to regen just a little bit quicker. And then lastly, the big one, Argent Quiver, which will give us a stacking 25% damage increase for 3 of our arrows at a time. And yeah, we can look at this in game. Each arrow that is buffed by Argent Quiver, we can see the Godslayer Broadhead buff on the left. We now deal 7,647 damage per buffed arrow. But now, being done with our artifact, let's talk armor. Beginning with our stats, we want to try and hit 200 weapon stat. This will give us the maximum increase to damage versus bosses. It also makes our ammo economy better. After that, we have 100 super for the minimum cooldown there. Then we want an even or so investment into melee and class so that our neutral game doesn't suffer. And then when it comes to armor set bonuses, I would recommend the 4-piece Vault of Glass armor, which will generate orbs of power during damage for just dealing damage. Or we can use the 4-piece Root of Nightmares armor, which will give us 20% damage reduction while we have Devour active. Ultimately though, there's nothing super important here. But now we have our armor mods. Remember that this is for DPS, so some of my choices might look a bit weird for most builds. On the helmet, we run 2 super fonts for free super stats and a Radiant Light to help our allies get armor charge during damage. Then we run triple harmonic loader for faster time to release an arrow. This is an increase in our DPS actually. Our chest is for resist, depending on whatever boss you're fighting. Our legs get a triple void weapon surge for even more bow damage. And then our class item gets 2 time dilation, so charges last longer, and a powerful attraction so that we can dodge to suck up orbs. And with armor mods and armor stats discussed, we can now look at the current max DPS and total that our bow can put out. Just looking at one arrow, we deal like 10,000 damage. That's what a standard T-Crash is hitting. But then looking for the DPS in total, shooting all the reserves, it does take a while, but it ends up being 115,000 total and 4.6k DPS. And this is with losing buffs and no debuff and no Well of Radiance to stack with. This is very impressive in a suboptimal solo environment. Also, as a little bonus here, this is what our neutral game mod setup looks like. Nothing special, we really just want to make ammo and get orbs from ability kills. Remember that there will be multiple dim links labeled down in the description. But now we have the gameplay loop, and let's begin with the neutral side of things. Most of this is just playing Destiny 2 as basically as possible. We focus a lot on our weapons with this build, and we benefit a lot from the passive effects. So just spam your weapons using special ammo like rocket pulses, so don't be afraid to use the ammo because our weapon stat helps with our ammo economy a ton. Use abilities when you have them, and that'll be good enough. And remember that you can dodge to get out of jail by going invisible. Try to focus on marked targets for ability regen. That's from On the Prowl, but that really isn't even necessary. You should have Constant Devour and Overshield keeping you in the fight, especially when you're doing mechanics and stuff like that. When you do come against a high health target like champions or mini bosses, if you're in a particularly long encounter or an activity, you can use Leviathan's Breath to take them out. Again, with the high weapon stat, your ammo economy is really good, so don't be scared to use the heavy ammo. Soon though, you should get to a mini boss fight or a real boss fight, or if you're in a raid or dungeon, DPS is going to start. And this is where the main focus of this build comes from, as we want to pump out max DPS. We want to top the charts. And to do this, all you need is you have your supercharge and you have heavy ammo. Begin damage by launching your first tether straight at the boss. This debuffs the boss for you and your allies while also starting up the bow and arrow machine. At this point, all you want to do is spam Leviathan's Breath. For max fire rate, shoot from the hip. All you do is hold and release the trigger. Using your other tethers actually is damage loss here. If you are in a short phase, the bow should just kill the boss. But if you're in a longer damage phase, you will eventually run out of Leviathan's Breath ammo, which will happen shortly after your tether meter runs out. At this point, swap to your secondary DPS option that we discussed earlier, which is usually sniper, and go to town while you still can. And remember, Fortune's Favor is buffing our sniper damage too. But yeah, that is literally all you have to do, and you will have max DPS in the game right now. But however, here at the end, for my truly sweaty players, I want to quickly describe something. You can actually do another loadout swap and swap to Still Hunt with Celestial Nighthawk, even though we're not on Solar, and be able to do a ton more damage, thanks to that exotic combo. This is actually what you're seeing here, where we one-phased Argos on Cutthroat. Ultimately, this combo, this Void Hunter build is really nuts. And with that, thank you for getting this far into the video. Your viewership is greatly appreciated. Remember, I'm trying to hit 50K, eventually 30K soon, hopefully. Can't do it without your help. But remember, if you want to support me, support the channel, a like, a comment, a subscription, coming over to Twitch and saying hi there, joining my Discord, hyping the video on mobile, all of that helps out a massive amount. If you want to support me, support the channel, but you can't think of a comment down below, winner. Because Hunters, they won. This is it. The best boss DPS until the end of time. And it's Hunters. But with that, as usual, I hope you are having a great day, and I hope to see you around.